So, is it just the three of us today?
I believe the others are working on Creature 6606.
Please call them humans in my presence.
Of course, I apologize, sir. If it's just the three of us, then we should hurry to complete the main system for humans. It is the most important system after all, and the human systems cannot function without it.
So we're supposed to make a system that help humans coordinate every function in their bodies and make it work interconnectedly with the other systems.
So our plan for the nervous system is that it's a physically connected network of cells, tissues, and organs that control processes in the body. It'll coordinate all activities of the body and enable it to adapt to changes both inside and out. Almost every creature has a nervous system, as this system is the foundation of all other systems, but knowing God, he probably hasn't created any of the other creatures yet.
So our plan for it is to be in constant motion. The nervous system will be light and quick, making sure the body maintains homeostasis and working quickly to maintain important processes, such as heart rate and breathing, while also reacting quickly to external stimuli, like jerking away after touching something hot. If we didn't make it like that, then God wouldn't have his little people to play with, because they're gonna die.
If this is the most important system in our body, we should have a name for it, right? Any proposals?
Well, what did we name it in the other creatures?
I like doing things out of order.
That means we haven't even named the other creatures yet! Oh my god!
We may have not developed the others yet.
God, what nerves you have.
Hey, I never said we named the system. It's called the nervous system.
Well then, sir, since we have the other creatures developed already, we better get it done fast. It's the 5th day and the deadline is coming up soon.
Deadline?
Okay, let us work our way up from small to big. But first, we need to identify the organs for our systems, the main ones. What are they gonna be?
Make the main organ soft and squishy. It'll be the brain. We need to make it pretty big to compensate for the fact that they have literally no other advantages.
Why?
Yes, we'll call it the brain, but where should we put it?
What about the second one?
Second one?
You know, we have the backup, right? We have 2 eyes, 2 kidneys, 2 ears. Where are we gonna put the other one for backup?
Nah. We'll just have one, and it'll be soft and squishy. It'll be funny. Their only advantage is this one organ that's irreplaceable and incredibly soft and easy to damage.
Okay, well for starters, we need to make the cranium hollow. We can fit the brain into there.
I wanted for them to have a rock head so they could smash everything.
And we can connect the spine to the brain. But how will we receive information?
We'll need to create some kind of specialized cell for this, for it to transmit information.
What will we call them?
Well, it's the nervous system, so how about neurons?
We'll need lots if we're going to transmit information throughout the whole body. About how many do you think we'll need?
100 billion would be good, give or take.
That's the number of stars we have in the sky.
It's a good number. It'll look something like...
Let me just... Here. We'll make them like this.
The neuron will be our specialized cell, our little messenger that stores information and carries messages within the nervous system and between other body systems. This is sounding great.
So the cell body will be like the other cells, right? Like it'll be the part of the neuron that contains the components of the cell, such as the nucleus, mitochondria, ribosomes, and so on and so forth.
Yes, that's exactly it, my dude.
So then, since information travels through the human by electrical currents, let's have long extensions that carry electrical messages away from the cell body and passes them to other cells. What should we call them though?
Axons!
Why though?
What? It sounds cool.
If these messages travel from neurons to neurons, then something has to receive it.
That's what the dendrites will be for. They're extremely small, so they'll be branching extensions of the cytoplasm in the cell membrane that receive and transmit messages to neighboring cells.
Hee, they look like palm trees. Also, workers' rights. Split the job. Have multiple neurons.
That actually sounds like a good idea. We can have 3 different types of neurons that each each have their own responsibilities. That way, it's more efficient. And let's see, the first one, it could be the sensory neurons. They could be involved in detecting stimuli like heat or ice and transmit signals to the brain and spinal cord.
Cool, so neurons for feeling.
Exactly. For the interneurons, they will make up the back and spinal cord and receive signals from sensory neurons and relay them within the spinal cord. They will process and relay information, so they're kind of like a post office, receiving information from sensory neurons, processing it, and then passing signals on to motor neurons.
Oh, so they'll be like little messengers.
Precisely. And then for the motor neurons, they'll be the ones to pass messages from the nervous system to the other tissues in the body, such as muscles.
Oh, so these will be for moving.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? So where are we going to put them?
They're small, but we'll need lots of them, so I suggest that we have both motor and sensory neurons.
That makes sense.
Wait a minute. What are nerves? I'm so confused.
Alright, so I've inputted some of our plans and I have a model and some estimates for you, sir.
Give me what you got.
The nervous system is actually divided into two main sections, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Let's focus on the first one, the central nervous system. The central nervous system, or CNS, includes the brain and spinal system. It's composed of interneurons, which interact with other neurons, and then interact with other nerves in the body. The CNS receives, interprets, and sends those signals to the peripheral nervous system. The interneurons of the brain are then clustered together and called gray matter, while the axons of the brain are similarly clustered and called white matter. The brain is the body's control system, and it's essential to the operation of the nervous system. The body's most complex organ, it's enclosed by the cranium and connected to the spinal cord. Alongside the nerves and spinal cord, it helps form the central nervous system. The brain can be divided most simply into three primary components: the cerebellum, the cerebrum, and the brainstem. The cerebrum is the largest section and is responsible for voluntary action, the senses, speech, emotion, thinking, learning, and more. It can be divided into two halves called cerebral hemispheres. The left hemisphere is responsible for control of the right side of the body, whereas the right half controls the left side. It can be further divided into lobes, specifically the temporal, frontal, parietal, and occipital lobes. The cerebellum, on the other hand, is the rear portion of the brain and is responsible for coordinating the body's posture, equilibrium, fine muscle control, and balance. Lastly, the brainstem is located at the base of the brain and links the spinal cord to the cerebrum. The brainstem is composed of the midbrain, pons, and medulla and is responsible for controlling the heartbeat, breathing, blood pressure, swallowing, and more.
This brain you speak of is the ultimate power machine. It works harder than I do in the gym.
Oh, I doubt that very much, holy man.
Beyond the central nervous system, there is the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system connects the central nervous system to the arms, hands, legs, and feet, hence the name peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is then divided into smaller parts, involved with voluntary responses and involuntary responses. The peripheral system contains 12 pairs of nerves in the head, such as face muscles, and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. It uses the sensory neurons to detect stimuli from inside and outside of the body, and the motor neurons carry the signals from the central nervous system to the internal organs. In general, these two systems make up the most of the peripheral nervous system. Because the peripheral nervous system is not protected with bone like the central nervous system is, it is more vulnerable to damage. There are two subdivisions of the peripheral nervous system: the sensory division, or afferent division, and the motor division, or efferent division. The sensory division carries information from the receptors to the central nervous system. It always keeps the central nervous system updated on what is happening outside of the body. The motor division carries the nerves from the central nervous system to the muscles, glands, and organs. The voluntary side of the peripheral nervous system, on the other hand, is called the somatic nervous system. It controls skeletal movements and the perception of external stimuli. The somatic nervous system is made up of both sensory and motor subdivisions. The sensory and motor neurons are found in reflex arcs. A reflex is an automatic, involuntary reaction that is caused by a stimulus and is carried out by a reflex arc. Then, the action is interpreted as a sensation of pain in the brain. This demonstrates that the reflex arc can occur without the brain. The automatic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system, and it maintains homeostasis within the body. It's involuntary, so these actions are carried out unconsciously. The ANS has control over heart rate, digestion, respiration rate, salivation, and perspiration. Some functions, though, like breathing, work in tangent with the conscious mind. The automatic nervous system is also made up of sensory and motor neurons that send information to the organs. These neurons also create a reflex arc, but it passes through the medulla oblongata. This would enable the bodily functions to continue working even if the brain suffers from trauma, but things like awareness and consciousness are lost, or in other words, was in a vegetative state. There are two subdivisions of the automatic nervous system: sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. The sympathetic division gets the body ready in times of emergency, the fight or flight system, while the parasympathetic controls all non-emergency functions.
I'm having a nervous breakdown just listening to all this complex info. This is incredible work, advisor. Keep this up and you may be promoted to head creator.
Gee, thanks. The health insurance perks that come with that job are super useful when you live forever. Another essential component of the nervous system is the spinal column. The spinal column consists of vertebrae, fluid, meninges, and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is a rope-like bundle of neurons that is about as wide as your thumb. It connects the brain to the nerves that are found throughout the body. All signals that go to or from the brain pass through the spinal cord. Although movement is controlled by your cerebellum and cerebrum, your brain depends on your spinal cord to deliver messages to the proper muscles. For example, when you're brushing your teeth and you want to move your arm, the cerebrum will send an impulse down the spinal cord. The impulse is directed by an interneuron to the motor neuron that connects to the arm muscles. The motor neuron then carries the impulse to the receptors in the arm muscle. When the receptors are stimulated by the impulse, your arm moves. If the spinal cord is damaged, messages might not be able to move between the brain and the rest of the body, resulting in paralysis. The spinal cord also controls involuntary movements called reflexes. Reflex arcs are the nerve pathways that need to cross only two synapses before producing a response. Because the signal never has to travel up the spinal cord to the brain, you react quickly. These synapses are junctions between two nerve cells that allow them to pass signals to one another. One of the chief applications of the nervous system is transmission of sensory information. The nervous system communicates with various sensory body parts, allowing the brain to interpret those messages as particular feelings or senses. In the eyes, for instance, photoreceptor cells transmit visual information such as brightness, color perception, and contrast to the brain via optic nerves, allowing us to see. With ears, sound waves are transmitted to the inner ear's vestibulocochlear nerve, which carries information to the brain's temporal lobe, which then interprets them as sounds. In the tongue, on the other hand, taste receptors are stimulated as tastants chemically react with the saliva. That information is then transmitted to the brain, which interprets it as flavor. For skin, via the somatosensory system, mechanoreceptors respond to stimuli, and afferent neurons send information via the dorsal column nuclei synapses, which, through second-order neurons, transmit sensory signals to the thalamus and, in ventrobasal complex, synapse with third-order neurons, which then transmit signals to the somatosensory cortex, which interprets those signals as various sensations. Lastly, with the nose, receptor proteins of olfactory receptor cells in the olfactory epithelium, which is a specialized epithelial tissue at the rear of the nasal cavity, bind with odorous molecules, resulting in the transmission of signals along the axons of olfactory nerves to the brain's olfactory bulb, within its limbic system, which analyzes smells in relation to the specific substance as well as previous smells encountered. That information then goes to the CNS, which makes psychological, behavioral, and emotional associations with the particular smell.
This video is sponsored by Nerve Impulses. Without it, this video would not be possible. Now, this is a paid sponsorship, so I'll be going into depth on how a nerve impulse travels through the body. Let's take tapping for example. As you tap your finger on a disc, pressure receptors in your fingers stretch. The stretching causes a change in charge distribution that triggers a moving electrical impulse called an action potential. An action potential requires ion channels in the membrane that have gates that open and close. When a neuron is stimulated, gated channels for sodium ions open quickly, and sodium ions rush into the cell. This stimulates adjacent sodium ions down the axon to spring open. Sodium ions rush into the cell, and then those channels snap shut. At the same time, potassium ion channels are opening and closing more slowly. These ions slowly diffuse out the axon and return the membrane to resting potential. Because the potassium ion channels are slow to respond to the change in the axon's charge, they appear to open and close behind the moving impulse. Before an action potential moves into the next neuron, it crosses a tiny gap between the neurons called a synapse. The axon terminal, the part of the axon through which the impulse leaves the neuron, contains chemical-filled vesicles. When the impulse reaches the terminal, vesicles bind to the terminal's membrane and release their chemicals into the synapse. Neurotransmitters are the chemical signs of the nervous system. They bind to receptor proteins on the adjacent neuron and cause sodium ion channels in that neuron to open, generating an action potential. Typically, many synapses connect neurons. Before the adjacent neuron generates an action potential, it usually needs to be stimulated at more than one synapse. The amount a neuron needs to be stimulated before it produces an action potential is called a threshold. Once neurotransmitters have triggered a new action potential, they must be removed from the synapse so that ion channels on the second neuron will close again. These neurotransmitters will be broken down by enzymes in the synapse, or they are transported back into the terminal that released them.
The entire system has support from other cells called glia cells. Their job is to surround neurons and hold them in place, to supply nutrients and oxygen to neurons, to insulate one neuron from another, and to destroy and remove the carcasses of dead neurons, which is cleanup. Schwann cells insulate the axons in something called a myelin sheath and help the axons send messages. Myelin sheath is the insulating envelope of fatty tissues that surrounds the core of a nerve fiber or axon and helps facilitate the transmission of nerve impulses. Welcome to Connection of Things That You Never Knew Were Connected. Today, we're going to be talking about the nervous system and 3 other systems that you never knew were connected. Talk about exciting, right? Here's how the skeletal system is connected with the nervous system. It's a joint job to control your body. Bones provide calcium that is essential for the proper functioning of the nervous system. The skull protects the brain from injury, the vertebrae protects the spinal cord from injury, and the sensory receptors and joint between bones send signals about body position to the brain. And also, the brain regulates the position of bones by controlling muscles. But we can't have just the skeletal system, it'll get bonely. Get it? Bonely? Lonely? Okay. So the receptors and muscles provide the brain with information about body position and movement. The brain controls the contraction of skeletal muscles. The nervous system regulates the speed at which food moves through the digestive tract. But let's not get off track here. We still have the digestive system. The nervous system stimulates digestion through increasing the blood flow directly to your digestive tract. Your salivary gland is stimulated, increasing the saliva that contains enzymes, which aid in the initial chemical process of digestion. It also controls the constriction and relaxation of the intestine muscle, which help pushes the contents through the intestines. Otherwise, natural waste elimination is not possible. Your body's entire immune system could be compromised without a well-functioning nervous system, since 70% of the immune system is found in the digestive tract. It also regulates the functioning and production of gastric acid in the stomach, which impacts overall digestive health. Well, there we go. That is all for Connection of Things That You Never Knew Were Connected. See you next time, guys.
Welcome to Sharon's Science Show channel. Today, we're looking at other organisms' nervous systems. There'll be fish, snakes, jellyfishes, sponges, and arthropods. Let's get excited for science. First, we have the fish. They, as well as other aquatic vertebrates, have a lateral line system. The lateral line system is a system of tactile sense organs, unique to aquatic vertebrates, that serves to detect movements and pressure changes in the surrounding water. The system is made up of a series of mechanoreceptors called neuromasts, which are lateral line organs, arranged in an interconnected network along the head and body. The network typically arranged in rows. However, neuromasts may also be organized singly. For most fishes, neuromasts lie embedded in the floor of mucus-filled structures called lateral line canals. The canals are placed just underneath the skin, and only the receptor portion of each neuromast extends into the canal. Neuromasts are made up of a cluster of sensory and support cells encapsulated within a yellow-like sheath called the cupula. Each sensory cell, or hair cell, bears several small cilia, and each cilium may be stimulated by water movement or pressure from a single direction. The lateral line system allows the fish to determine the direction and rate of water movement. The fish can then gain a sense of its own movement, that of nearby predators or prey, and even the water displacement of stationary objects. Humans may not have the same system as aquatic vertebrates, but we have our own sensory organs that gets the job done. We may not be able to determine the rate of water movement, or even the water displacement of stationary objects, but we sure have our sense of temperature, sense of balance, sense of spatial awareness, and so on. Our nerves receive the information, and our brain process it. But we can't sense infrared radiation, which snakes can do. Snakes have holes on their faces called pit organs, which contain a membrane that can detect infrared radiation from warm bodies up to 1 meter away. Nerve cells in the pit organ contain an ion channel called TRPA1, an infrared receptor that detects infrared radiation as heat, rather than as light. The receptors are also found inside the heads of mammals, where TRPA1 channels, also known as wasabi receptors, detect pungent irritants from mustard plants or other sources. TRPA1 is an ion channel located on the plasma membrane of many human and animal cells, best known as a sensor for environmental irritants such as pain, cold and itch. The pit organ is part of the snake's somatosensory system, which detects touch, temperature and pain, and does not receive signals from the eyes. Confirming that snakes see infrared by detecting heat, not photons of light. Infrared radiation heats up the pit membrane tissue. TRPA1 channels open when a threshold temperature is reached, allowing ions to flow into the nerve cells and triggering an electrical signal. The antenna membrane hangs in a hollow bony chamber, allowing for quick heat loss and maximizing the detected temperature differences between warm-blooded animals and everything else. On the contrary, jellyfishes are not warm-blooded. In fact, they don't even have blood. Instead of a centralized, true brain, jellyfish possess a diffuse network of cells known as a nerve net, which spreads around the inner margin of the bell and interacts with clusters of small sensory structures called rhopalia. Some species, including the notoriously dangerous box jellyfish, also possess a nerve ring that connects groups of rhopalia. This arrangement allows jellyfish to detect and respond to environmental stimuli from their surroundings. The neurons in the nerve net sometimes have to serve as sensory neurons and motor neurons. Not only will they send messages back to the brain, but they'll receive and give directions for muscle contraction. Recently, scientists have discovered that this neural circuitry is in fact highly sophisticated. Jellyfish's neural system integrates substantial sensory and motor inputs to generate complex and species-typical behaviors. These include assessing salt levels and diving to avoid fresh water, as well as swimming in more elaborate patterns after capturing prey. Astonishingly, box jellyfish have recently been shown to process visual information from an extraordinary set of 24 eyes of 4 different types, and even use terrestrial visual cues, compressed by refraction through the water surface, to navigate to a preferred habitat. Sponges, however, can't move. One of the most primitive animals, sponges are immobile and live by filtering detritus, which is dead particulate organic material, from the water. They have no brains, neurons, organs, or even tissues, but these animals still have the genetic components of synapses, one of the most crucial parts of our nervous system. And their versions share startling similarities with those of humans. Synapses are junctions between 2 nerve cells that allow them to pass signals to one another, and these messages are carried by neurotransmitters that cross the synaptic gap. When they reach the receiving cell, the messages come across an elaborate tangle of proteins called the postsynaptic density. The PSD processes the neurotransmitters, among many other important roles, allowing the receiving cell to respond appropriately to the nervous signal. A sponge's PSD proteins greatly resembles those of humans and other animals, and were built of similar arrangements of domains. But not only does a sponge have the full set of PSD proteins, in all likelihood, it can assemble them into a fully functioning whole. The PSD of sponges is switched on in a type of cell called the flask cell. Flask cells are only found in sponge larvae, which, unlike the adults, are free-swimming. These cells could help the larvae to sense their environment, and could well have been a starting point for the evolution of neurons. And our last section of the day, arthropods. So the arthropod nervous system consists of a dorsal brain and a ventral, ganglionated longitudinal nerve cord, primitively paired, from which lateral nerves extend in each segment. The neuromuscular organization of arthropods is quite different from that of vertebrates, in which one neuron supplies a number of muscle cells, together forming a functional motor unit. Arthropods can't have those units due to the small size of the muscles. Instead, the muscles contract based off which of the several different types of neurons supplying one muscle cell are fired. The sensory nerve endings are lodged in cuticular hairs, peg-like projections, cones, pits, or slits, which may occur in large numbers on antennae, mouthparts, joints, and leg tips. Changes in the tension of the surrounding cuticle stimulate the nerve endings. For example, the legs of spiders and scorpions possess slits in the exoskeleton that are covered by a thin membrane to which a neuronal receptor is attached below. Tension changes in the exoskeleton cause slight movements in the cuticular membrane and stimulate the receptors. Slits of varying lengths may be grouped together like the strings of a harp. Slits and organs enable spiders to detect web vibrations produced by trapped insects, and they permit scorpions to detect ground vibrations produced by approaching prey. Taste and smell sensory organs have holes in the cuticle permitting the chemical substances to enter. Isn't that cool? All these organisms with their own nervous systems, differing from ours yet still able to thrive. But that's all for this episode. Appreciate your neurons, and stay smart, kids.
I have today's fun facts for you right here. Fun fact number 1. There are more nerve cells in the human brain than there are stars in the Milky Way, and there are anywhere from 100 billion to 400 billion stars. Fun fact number 2. A newborn's baby brain almost triples in size during the course of its first year. Fun fact number 3. If we line up all the neurons in our body, it would be around 965 kilometers long. Fun fact number 4. Brain spheroids grown from skin cells can be converted into blank slate cells once fed a cocktail of molecules that encourages them into becoming immature brain cells. Isn't that cool? And last but not least, fun fact number 5. The left side of human brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. Well, that's all for tonight. See you next time with more fun facts. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Wait, what's that book in your hands? Oh, this book? It's about how God gave human diseases. Wait, God didn't give human diseases? That's not what this book said. Get that heresy out of here. You don't have any proof. Who said I didn't? Wait, what? Give that to me.
Alzheimer's
See for
disease
yourself.
is a form of dementia which occurs when an individual's brain cells deteriorate and eventually die. Initially, sufferers will experience memory loss and mild cognitive problems, which over time worsen until they can no longer communicate and lose all motor abilities, eventually leading to death.
See? What did I say? Was that God speaking? Yeah, that was God himself. Are you absolutely sure? Yep. Wait a minute. How did you get this? I have my ways. I mean, well, you could have faked it for all I know. Actually, if you think about it, it's Satan who did it. Oh, Satan, huh? Have you ever heard about Kuru? Well, only Satan can make a disease this bad. What? Here, I have evidence. Kuru is a rare neurodegenerative disease which, similarly to mad cow disease, is caused by prions, which are infectious proteins in brain tissue. Prions are misshapen protein molecules that clump together and accumulate in brain tissue. Scientists believe that misshapen prion proteins have the ability to change their shape and cause other proteins of the same type to also change shape. It was notably common in New Guinea, where traditional funerary practices include cannibalistic rituals. This practice stopped in 1960, but cases of Kuru were reported for many years afterwards because the disease has a long incubation period. The average incubation period is 10 to 13 years, but incubation period of 50 years or even longer have also been reported. Patients progressively lose motor functions until the body becomes unable to survive. Symptoms of Kuru include arm and leg pain, coordination problems that become severe, difficulty walking, and like most of the other prion diseases, dementia is either minimal or absent. Mood changes often present, headaches, swallowing difficulties, tremors and muscle jerks, difficulty swallowing and being unable to feed oneself, leading to malnutrition or starvation. There is no known treatment for Kuru, and death usually occurs within 1 year after the first sign of symptoms. Yeah, horrible, isn't it? Oh my god. Still, I think God did it.
Attention! If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, then you may be entitled to celestial compensation. Parkinson's disease is a neurological disorder provoked by damage to nerve cells in the substantia nigra, which produces dopamine, a chemical that is necessary for movement and motor control. It is most common in individuals over 65, and symptoms would include shaking, muscular rigidity, sluggish movement, stooped posture, or balance problems. Call 1-800-99-OMG today for a free spiritual consultation and divine information packet. Parkinson's patients, call now. 1-800-99-OMG.
Has your arm been acting odd lately?
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Huh.
Do you think your arm has a mind of its own? Well, listen to this unhelpful guide on alien hand syndrome to see if you have it. Alien hand syndrome is a rare neurological disorder which causes an arm to act on its own accord. Alien hand may exhibit self-groping behavior and self-oppositional behavior. A person with the syndrome may also slap the alien hand with the normal hand as a punitive action. The syndrome has been reported after surgery on the corpus callosum and with brain tumors, aneurysms, degenerative diseases of the brain, and uncommonly stroke. Sadly, there is no established treatment, but on the bright side, your life will be forever unpredictable times 100.
Okay, so that's the nervous system broken down. Let's hope we don't have a nervous breakdown creating it.
Alright, let's get to work.
I'm sorry, I broke anything. Did I break anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.